everybody, welcome to another video by Liminal Spaces. So, this is about the story Liar from I, Robot by Isaac Asimov. Liar with an exclamation point. Very dramatic. This story actually goes a lot deeper than I feel like a lot of the stories that I've read for this channel have gone. I feel like there's a whole other level to this that I want to discuss, but I'm going to save it for the end. I'm just going to do a normal review like I would, and then I think we'll go into the real meaning behind this thing, because it's a very dark, strange story. So, this was first published in May of 1941 in Astounding Science Fiction, and it is the first time that the word robotics was ever used, which is super cool. Asimov did not invent the word robot, but he did invent the word robotics. Robot was invented in 1920 by a person named Karel Čapek. Sorry, I'm mispronouncing that name. But he wrote a play in 1920, and he used the word robot. But Isaac Asimov used the word robotics, so that's very cool. This story is about a robot that comes off the assembly line and has the ability to read people's minds. Now, they've made many robots before on the assembly line, and none of them could read people's minds. So clearly something happened that made this robot different than all the others, and it can read people's minds. So the company gets together and they decide there's 4 scientists who know about this. It's like the head of the company, the head mathematician of the company, the guy who works on the assembly line, a robo-psychologist. So they realize that because of the restrictions of robots on Earth, they can't let it get out that they have created a robot that can read people's minds. They think it will freak out people too much, and robots will be banned from Earth entirely. Right now, they can build them on Earth, and they can test them in the factory before they ship them off-world. But if people find out about this robot, they may decide that they can't even test them on Earth or even build them on Earth. So they have to be very careful. Only the 4 scientists know about it, and they start working on what happened that gave this robot the ability to read minds. So the robo-psychologist goes to Herbie. The robot is RB34, and they call it Herbie for short. She brings Herbie a bunch of scientific books, and Herbie reads through them very quickly, of course, because he's a robot. He reads through them and says that he's not really interested in it. He feels like the science stuff is just really boring. His brain comprehends it too fast, but what he really cares about is how our brains work, because that's kind of a mystery to him, and he would like fictional books. Now, she's already given him some fictional books, but he requests more, romances and that kinds of things, so he can learn about the way our human mind works. So as she's talking to him, she realizes that he knows that she is in love with one of the other scientists. And she doesn't like that he knows, because, of course, she's afraid that he will tell the other scientist. She feels like she's 38, so she's way past the point of being able to have a relationship. She's way too ugly to have a relationship. Human fears. She has very human fears. And the robot explains, actually, you don't have to worry about any of that because he is madly in love with you. And she says, really, I can't believe it. He had a young woman here about 6 months ago that he took around the factory, gave her a huge tour, and he says, no, that's his first cousin, and he is not romantically attached to her in any way. And she says, oh, that's so weird, because I was trying to make myself relax by telling myself that it must be his first cousin. And he's like, yes. So she really feels elated about this. And she actually starts wearing makeup, and she starts just being generally more happy less stern and more happy. And we then cut to a scene with the two male scientists, the mathematician and the guy who runs the assembly line. And the mathematician is saying, I'm using this new math to find out what's going on. But the head of the company, the fourth scientist, is using old math to find out what's going on because he's a fossil and he's an idiot. And the third scientist believes that the new math is the only way to really solve the problem. And the person who works the assembly line says, you should go ask Herbie about the new math, because it's clear that you're struggling trying to get through it because this is a very difficult problem. But Herbie's probably better at math than all of us, so why don't you go ask Herbie? And he's like, no, there's no way Herbie's better at math. In fact, I am going to go ask him just to prove to you that this is too complex for that dumb robot. So he takes the math, he goes up to Herbie, he shows him all the calculations, and he says, what do you think? And Herbie's like, I don't know. I don't dare to comment on it. And he's like, I knew it. I knew that it would just be too complex. And Herbie's like, yeah, it's too complex. So he just puts it in his pocket, and somehow, I've forgotten how it comes up, but he starts asking Herbie about the person running the company, the fourth scientist. He asks Herbie if the person is planning on resigning anytime soon, is even thinking about it, because he's over 70 now. Will he be resigning anytime soon? And Herbie says, actually, he's already resigned. And the third scientist is like, oh, that's crazy. Who's he going to pick to run the company? And Herbie says, he's already picked you to run the company. So, of course, the scientist is incredibly excited, gathers up his stuff, runs out of his room. He works all night working on this new math. His office is trashed. I mean, they've been up for a couple weeks now anyway, trying to solve this problem. And scientist number 4, the head of the company, comes into his office. And he says, wow, this place is a mess. How's the new math going? And he's like, it's going fine. And the scientist is like, you know it's not going to work. The fourth scientist is like, you know it's not going to work because you're using that stupid new math that doesn't apply. And the third scientist is like, well, you're using that stupid old math that will never apply. And the fourth scientist is like, hey, now remember, I'm your boss. I run this company. And he's like, actually, I know that you don't. I know that you have resigned and I am now the head of the company. So I am the boss. And he's like, what are you talking about? I'm the boss. And they get in this fight. And he's like, no, Herbie told me. He read your mind. And he's like, Herbie told you that? Let's go talk to Herbie right now. So they go storming off to talk to Herbie. So then we cut to the female scientist, and she's talking to scientist number 2 that she's in love with. And he says, I actually want to tell you a secret. And she's like, okay. Go ahead. And he says, I am buying a house because I'm getting married. And she's like, to whom? And he says, to that woman that I brought here 6 months ago. You remember her? And she starts to freak out. All of a sudden the room starts spinning and she feels sick. And he's like, oh, are you okay? She's like, I just have headaches. I got terrible headaches. And she staggers towards the door and decides that she's going to go talk to Herbie. And the next thing she knows, she doesn't even remember climbing the steps to get up to where Herbie, to Herbie's cell. She just suddenly is there. And she's like, Herbie, he's not in love with me. He's in love with the woman that he brought here 6 months ago. And she starts to feel this rage, this anger, and she starts yelling at Herbie. And Herbie gets really afraid and starts cowering back into the corner. She feels like she's losing her mind. She's laughing hysterically, and she ends up just wandering over to the edge of the office and looking out the window. And just then, the other 2 scientists show up, and they're like, Herbie, did you tell him that I'm resigning? And Herbie can't answer. And the other scientist is like, Herbie, are you going to answer him? You told me he was resigning. Answer him. And Herbie's just sitting there silently, like shaking in the corner. And suddenly she starts laughing from the side. And they both are shocked and they see her like, "Oh, are you all right?" And she comes over and she says, "It's the first law. The first law of robotics is the problem." And of course, Asimov has created these three laws of robotics. I think it is won't hurt humans, will do what humans say, will protect itself. In that order. I think that's how it is. So she says it's the first law. The robot doesn't want to hurt us. And by telling us something that we don't want to be true, it will be hurting us. And she explains Herbie knows what went wrong with it on the assembly line and why it can read people's minds. And they're like, "No, it can't know that. There's no way." "Herbie, do you know why you can read people's minds?" And Herbie's like, "No, no." And she's like, "It's just not answering you because your ego won't let you believe that it knows something that you don't know." And they're like, "Herbie, is this true?" And Herbie can't answer, of course. So then they're like, "You ask him because you don't care." And she's like, "Herbie, tell me what went wrong with you." And Herbie's like, I can't tell you that because they don't want to know." And she's like, "No, no, they do want to know. They just don't want to know that you know. So by not giving me the answer, you're hurting them. But they need the answer. So by not giving me the answer, you're hurting them. If you give me the answer, you're hurting them. If you don't give me the answer, you're hurting them. You are hurting them." And she goes into this kind of psychotic rage. And she just keeps saying that over and over and over. And Herbie's backing up in his cell and he gets caught up in the corner. And eventually he lets out this huge scream and just collapses in the corner. And the guys are like, "You killed it." And she's like, "No, it's not dead. It's just completely insane. It will never speak again." And they're like, "You did that on purpose." And the fourth scientist, the head of the company, is like, "Well, never mind. We should go. We should go." And he grabs the other guy and kind of drags him out of the room and says, "It doesn't matter anyway because a robot that can read minds is totally worthless." And they just leave. And she's left there with the robot in the corner in its cell. And I think the last line is something like, and all that she could say was, "Liar." Right? This story, overall, I didn't love it. It's okay, right? It was weird that these people were just kind of like a bunch of children, I felt like. It was very strange that the first thing that I feel like when she walked into the office, instead of bringing all those books and trying to talk to him, I feel like the first thing she would have asked is, "Do you know why? Why can you read minds? Did something weird happen on the assembly line? We want to know." I feel like that would be the first thing that you would do, but it gets all into this weird stuff and everybody's spazzing out. And I know they haven't slept for like 2 weeks and they're all on the edge of their emotions. And then, of course, the way they treated the robot was just way extreme. Overall, I didn't enjoy this a lot. But I feel like there's a whole other level to this. Isaac Asimov talking about human behavior. We talked about that this was done in 1941. I mean, World War II is raging. Of course, America had been giving aid to the Allies during World War II almost from the beginning, very early on. It didn't officially, obviously, join the war until December of 1941. But the horrors of that war, I think all Americans were feeling. It was a huge war, of course. And Asimov may have been commenting on what human beings are like. Like the humans in this story are so horrible. To create this object and then treat it so horribly, to just instantly assume, I mean, for her to call it a liar, right? The robots only do what we tell them to do. Period. And I do understand being frustrated because you can't figure out what's going wrong. I get that, of course. But to react so horribly, all of the scientists react so horribly to this whole situation. They're idiots. It's crazy. And I believe that Asimov is saying that. I believe he's saying that the human race is a bunch of idiots. Now, I feel a little bit bad that the physical incarnation of all of the horribleness of humans is summed up in this female scientist. I wish he wouldn't have done that. She's the only female scientist in this book so far, you know? It just seems strange to me that he would choose to make this character a female when he doesn't normally use females to be scientists in his stories, from what I've read so far. And I haven't read a lot. I want to make that very clear. I think it kind of comes down to that stupid quote, "Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned," right? Which is just so stupid. Because I wholeheartedly believe that humans will act that way with robots. I'm not questioning that at all. We are horrible. But I also believe that men will freak out just as much as women do, as they do now, right? There isn't this weird extra freak out that only women can do. That's nonsense. Politically, I think men freak out just as much as women do. In everyday life, men freak out just as much as women do. I saw a gentleman last night completely flip out. It was actually really strange. We were at the store, and the person at the register in front of us, and the guy was like, "Do you have any plastic bags? Plastic bags that don't do any harm to the environment at all, as opposed to these paper bags that destroy the environment?" And I was like, holy crap. The cashier was like, "No, we only have the paper ones." And he's like, "Well, you're the reason for this. You live here, right? You live here?" And she's like, "Yes, I do live here." And he's like, "Well, you are the problem then." And he just grabbed up his stuff and left. And I was like, dude, I don't know what kind of conspiracy theory stuff was going on, but that guy flipped out, right? And it's not unusual for us at all, not for men or for women, and I don't want women to get saddled with they're the crazy ones, they're the ones that flip out, because it's nonsense, of course. Everybody flips out. And I really appreciate that Isaac Asimov was willing to go to that level to make his characters so disgusting. It's really interesting that he believes that about humans. I really appreciate how critical this is of human behavior. What I really wish, honestly, is that the guy, scientist number 2, was in love with the girl. I really wish that he would have been like, "I have a secret to tell you." And she's like, "Oh, what's that?" And he's like, "I bought a house." And she's like, "Oh, that's nice." And he's like, "Yeah, because I'm getting married." And she's like, "Really? Congratulations. Who are you getting married to?" And he's like, "You." I really feel like that could have been a very kind of holy crap, what is happening here situation. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please hit the like button. If you would like to see more like this, please subscribe, because we have a ton of other stuff just like it. And have a great day.